Class, hello, and welcome to week one of reading the New Testament. Many of you have probably just had me as professor for reading Old Testament. So, if so, and you're just had a little break, I hope you enjoyed it and are ready to get cracking. Now, week one, I'm going to go over this, and obviously there will be another video specifically on the syllabus. But let's go ahead and get right into what you have to do during week one, because I am going to kind of adjust and kind of clarify on some of the assignments. This is a newer course that they're trying some things in how to fill out and explain assignments, and I think it needs a little bit of clarification, which I'm going to do here for you. So here on the first page, this week's objectives: define presupposition, provide examples of their own presuppositions. This is you guys as students, and explain how these presuppositions influence your reading of the Bible. Then outline various approaches to reading the New Testament, and then explain necessary qualities of a reader and suggest how to read the Bible. This has assignment 1-1, but obviously you need to do your reading before completing any of the assignments or even starting them. But please read your assignments before doing the reading. Why? Why would you do that, one might ask? Well, the reason why is because if you do all the reading, watch the video, and then learn what the assignments are, you might be a little bit surprised to realize, oh, I wish I would have known that while I did all my reading and so forth, so that I was thinking about how I was going to use this in the assignment. So be sure to watch this and to read over your assignments before doing the reading, but make sure you do the reading before doing your assignments, and that's pretty much standard for each week. All right, so this first week, obviously, Fee, De Silva, and Marshall is going to be your main reading. But you're going to do this on the first assignment. It's called a personal assessment recording, where we essentially are addressing this reality that everyone comes to the New Testament with preconceptions and personal emphases. What does that mean, you might ask? Well, Joe, that grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, whose father was a professor at Moody Bible Institute, whose grandparents and great-grandparents all went to Moody Bible Institute, is obviously going to have had an upbringing and an emphasis by the time he gets to Moody of how to read the New Testament and those preconceptions and so forth that are passed on from his church background, his family background, his own personal experience, what he's been taught, and so forth and so on. And Jane, who grew up in, let's say, I don't know, Southern California with some sort of New Age parents, let's say, that never talked about Christianity but were very spiritual, and she let's say she traveled around a lot and eventually found Jesus and is coming to Moody. Even in this class, would have preconceptions and personal emphases on certain things that just happen based on your background, whether you're 18 or 38 or whatever you are. So, on top of that, you can have the exact same experience as someone. It doesn't mean that and that's, I didn't even give like the differences that happen when you have different cultural emphasis, such as an American versus an Asian or Eastern culture, someone in the Southern United States versus someone in the Northern, we have so many different cultures and pockets of types of experience to potentially have as a person that's going to influence your preconceptions, your own personal influence of what's your parental influence been. We all know that for instance, if you have a father that is a very negative influence, or maybe not even there in your life, that's going to affect the way you view Scripture, or at least what types of Scripture are most meaningful to you, perhaps. So all that to say is, we all come to the New Testament with preconceptions and personal emphases. I even will come to Scripture, I've noticed, in different seasons. If I come to Scripture hurt and needing to forgive, it's amazing how those things influence everything I'm doing in reading almost any Scripture. So the point is that just in this exercise, to think upon your own background, your church, your family, your culture, and etc., and consider how that has impacted your reading of the New Testament. Okay? Now, some of you are like, well, that's such a big topic. Well, here's what we're going to do. I'll show you this in a second using the Video Everywhere tool. This is kind of something we did in reading Old Testament, so we'll go back over that. But I am also going to allow you just to write it. If some of you will probably maybe have some issues, some of you overseas and so forth. So I am going to allow you just to answer the questions in a written format if you choose. But some of you may enjoy doing the video format, so you can do that as well, okay? So you're going to answer the following questions in a brief 3 to 5 minute recording, or something of the equivalent, which really shouldn't be more than a couple pages, 1 or 2 pages. How has my background influenced how I read the New Testament? Okay? I don't even know if many of you are going to know how to do this. So we're going to give you some feedback at the end, but as long as you're doing a good job thinking this through, it's more like it's not a discussion board, but it's like a discussion board in the sense of like there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but we do want you to have demonstrate a bit of the reading this week when it deals with preconceptions, and start to think how that has affected your reading of the New Testament. What themes, symbols, and or books do you appreciate most of the New Testament? Which aspects of the New Testament, such as these topics or books, do I not pay as much attention to? So perhaps you had a pastor teach on Revelation when you were in 8th grade, and it confused the life out of you, and ever since then you're like, everything will work itself out. I don't really find any connection with the end times eschatology stuff. Or maybe you watched the Left Behind movie or something and freaked you out, and you never wanted to have anything to do with that, so you didn't really focus on that. Or potentially you don't pay as much attention to certain things that have to do with things that touch your struggles, sin life, or morality, or it could be in numerous things, soft spots that you have, or that you just love the aspects of Paul to the churches, or Jesus talking about loving your neighbor. Whatever it is, you're all going to have aspects that you appreciate more or less, or give more or less attention to. I'm adding to these 3 questions, so pay attention here. The other 2 questions I want you to answer is very quickly. So this is either, and I want you to do this not in a page or a half page, but these 2 questions should be very brief, no more than 2 to 3 sentences. And that is, so this would be question number 4. What is the gospel? Okay. And then question 5, what is the kingdom? This is obviously relating to the New Testament. So you have questions 1, 2, and 3. Then question 4, what is the gospel? No more than 2 sentences. I know you could all go on and on. So the key is that you need to be able to explain it in 2 sentences. And what is the kingdom? 2 sentences. Again, this is not as much right or wrong. I want to see where you're at and showing that you're at least trying to think deeply about this. And then we're going to use this kind of as a barometer to see how we're building on this throughout the course, okay? So don't freak out about right and wrong. In fact, I would prefer you not to spend hours upon hours on this. I want to kind of see where you guys are at after doing the reading, kind of seeing where your experiences and knowledge goes. Please don't spend lots of time on this one. It's a personal assessment, meaning that you're basically just describing where you're at. So do not go and ask your youth pastor what the kingdom is or the gospel. I know what the gospel is, pastor, but I'm nervous to get it wrong for my professor in my class. That would be the worst thing I want you to do at this point. I do not want you to ask others what the gospel or what the kingdom is. I want you to tell me where you're at, and I want to see how you respond to those things. Okay. And how you summarize it concisely. So, okay, so that's assignment 1. Oh, I do need to show you how to do that. So if you click assignment 1.1, like I said, you can answer all those questions on paper and just turn it in here. So you can see how you can browse your computer and attach a Word document if you really want to, or you can write it by typing it in here, or you can, and this is what it was telling you about. You click this, and well, it'll walk you through essentially how to, you need to sign into YouTube. You need to have a YouTube and a Google account, I think it says, and you record it that way. You could also just record it normally, upload it onto YouTube, and then post the link right there, if that's easier for you. Okay, so the instructions that it mentions some instructions here. See resources for directions on how to use this tool. So to access that, you would just click resources if you want a step-by-step tutorial on how to actually do that video stuff. Once you're in resources, you have to actually click resources to the specific course. All right, and then you'll see how to use Video Everywhere right there. Okay, you click on that and it will pop up this whole little tutorial on how to do that. All right, so if you have any questions, please let me know. But that is how you you do assignment 1-1. Okay, now assignment 2-1-2. That's how you, by the way, if you haven't figured that out already, that's how you know what week things are due. We have assignment 1-1 and 1-2 for week 1. So you have 2 assignments due in week 1. Assignment 2-2 would be due in week 2. If you had 2-9, that means 9 assignments are due in week 2, which you don't have. But the first number always represents what week they're due. Okay. Now, assignment 1-2. Select a Bible verse from the New Testament. Using the verse that you selected, provide examples of how people from different interpretive approaches might interpret that verse. Create a basic chart with the interpretive approach on the left and their possible interpretation on the right. You may refer to Marshall text and other readings to help with this. Submit your assignment by the end of this week by clicking on the 1-2 New Testament Approaches Interactive Assignment link above. Then create a new entry to submit your chart. Use the Insert Edit Table button in the content editor to create a chart, or copy and paste the chart into the message area. Okay, so you're probably just going to want to copy and paste. It also doesn't have to be a chart. I just want it to be clear. So this is set up like a blog entry. You don't need to respond to other people. It's really just hit create blog entry, and you're able to write in there. All right, so you can attach a file if you have a Word document to attach. Please don't use Excel or weird programs. Just use a Word document, please, or write in here. When it mentioned doing the text edit thing, that's the insert edit, or the insert edit table. You can try to do that. It's really confusing. I don't think it's very helpful. You hit that and like, okay, 2 columns, 2 rows, insert, and then it does this weird little thing. So don't even worry about that. To be honest with you, I think that's more confusing than it's worth. Like I said, just simply take your chart that you did in a Word document, or just do a Word document, or just write in here the following. Oh, hold on a second. I'm gonna remind you what it said. Let me go back real quick. Oops, not there. I'm gonna go back to week 1. Sorry, just 1 second. So you're gonna go. You see in 1-2, it said you're going to create a basic chart with the interpretive approach on the left and their possible interpretation on the right. So interpretive approach on the left, possible interpretation on the right. So you would write something like, I have the microphone in my hand. Let me put that down a second. Not going to be right, is it? Yeah, okay. So you'd have interpretive approach there. So you'd write whatever that is. And then you give the, what interpretation we said the other thing was?
interpretive approach on the left and the possible interpretation on the right. Yep. And then just do it like that. I mean, that's all you have to do. So you would have several of them. So you would have, have one, and then you'd have another interpretive. You wouldn't write interpretive approach either, right? You would write what the interpretive approach is, and then you'd write the possible interpretation. So all you're doing is, if you go back to Marshall in particular, so that's this reading here, it talks about certain interpretive approaches. So you want to find, based on your verse, so you would probably start by, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong one. So you probably start by sharing what your verse was. So you need to find a verse, probably one that it mentions in your reading, that it's a good one to do interpretive approaches off. So that's one way that I can see you're doing your reading, is that you're finding a good verse to do interpretive approaches on. And so let's say that the verse was, I'm just making one up, so this is not a good verse, but let's just say it is. Matthew 6:2. So you're saying Matthew 6:2, and then you're going to list a number of examples of several different types of interpretive approaches, and then the possible interpretations of Matthew 6:2. Okay, so that is what you do for the assignment. I don't really need a chart. I just need to know what verse you're doing, and I need to see several different types of interpretive approaches that one can use on your verse, and then give what that possible interpretation would be. So what are you not doing? You're not giving your interpretation, really. Sorry, I keep clicking to the wrong. You're not giving your interpretation. You're essentially making a list of different types of interpretive approaches, and then you're demonstrating that you can understand how to apply those interpretive approaches to a verse where there would be different interpretations based on the approach given. So one can say, let's say, an interpretive approach. You read a verse on, let's say, marriage, and you and your friends in high school are sitting around and going like, I think this means, and I think this means, and it's not really based on an interpretive approach, although in some ways it would be. Your own filter and preconceptions has to do with it, right? But it's not based on a specific approach for it. There are approaches that actually, I was going to say justified, but it doesn't justify a position, but it essentially rationalizes a position. So if person one decides on a verse that I believe that marriage is to be the place that you consummate that marriage and have sex after marriage, and another person's like, no, that is no longer valid because of a certain interpretive approach. Your friends can sit around and saying like, well, I want to have sex before marriage, so that's how I'm going to interpret this. That's not really an interpretive approach that we're talking about in this context. It is an interpretive approach. It's just not an academic interpretive approach. There are those that would argue based on an entire scholarly type of approach that law or whatever else is no longer valid because of XYZ. That would maybe be kind of an interpretive approach. That has nothing to do with the types of things you're probably going to see in Marshall, but I'm just trying to give you an example of you're not trying to give me an interpretation of what you believe. You're essentially just trying to show, find a verse that gives the opportunity to have several different approaches in the form of interpretation, and then you're discerning what that interpretation would be based on the approach. Okay, so I talked a lot on that, but it's not that complicated, but I just want to clarify what that assignment is. Also not that difficult, and again, that's mostly coming out of the Marshall reading, okay, which is a little bit of reading. So that's the Marshall reading, or the 1-2 assignment. Discussion board this week. Okay, what qualities, practices, and motives should be present with the ideal Bible reader? How might an ideal reader of the Bible differ from ideal readers of other books? Discuss with two of your peers. So basically, same same routine. You need to post this by Friday. Saturday at 12 a.m. is Friday night, guys, at 11:59. So at 12 a.m. Saturday, it's late. Friday night has to be posted, your first post, and then by Monday night at 11:59, you essentially have to interact with at least 2 classmates' posts. So same routine we've been doing, and again, you need to do your reading this week before you can really interact on this. So what motives and practices and qualities should be present for the ideal Bible reader? How might an ideal reader of the Bible differ from readers of other books? So if you're talking about how to read Shakespeare or other historical documents, how is that going to differ from an ideal reader of the Bible? Okay, so pretty straightforward. Have a good time. Let me know if there's questions. Talk to you soon.